What's going on, Tin Hut? We got today Pedro cannot be with us because he's got a charity event that he's supposed to be speaking at, I believe. It is November. A lot of these galas and charity events for are popping up or coming up, and it's becoming that joyful time, where we also got to watch out for each other. We got to check out on each other.
Yeah,
I thought I might have scared him away with my scary stories last time.
Right.
So it is like Will mentioned. It is like the holiday season now. The holiday season started, but oddly enough, it is the time of the year where depression starts dipping for a lot of us. Or rising. Depression starts rising, and your mood starts dipping.
Yeah,
that's what I meant. So we definitely have to police each other up and then check
do your check-ins with all your buddies, especially if you know that they're away from their family. There's still individuals that are not authorized to depart. If you're active duty, you're not authorized to depart your local area of employment because of whatever position you hold in the military. So just check up on your active duty reserves and guard that are still out there. But coming from that, we got Dr. B back. Last week we had an amazing show talking about some phenomena straight leading into Halloween, and we promised everybody that we were going to have extraterrestrial discussion, which today's going to be that day. Before we get started, though, Jose did want to bring up what month it is.
November is Native American Service Member month. Well, it's Native American month, but we are a military podcast, so it's Native American Service Member month, and it's Military Service Members Family Month, and then next week is Veterans Day on the 11th. It also, I don't know if Knott's Berry Farm, or there's a lot of freebies that are going on around.
Starts.
Yeah, this month is when it starts. So if you live in California, and I believe Knott's Berry Farm are still doing the whole service members get in for free, and plus one more person. But check online, go to Knott's Berry Farm if you're in California. But if you're in another state, check your state. There's a lot of things that are going on for free, especially on Veterans Day. And we'll probably have a list of that because Veterans Day lands on Thursday.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that already have that list.
Yeah.
And already got their whole day planned out. Yeah. But you know what? Talking about Native American month, Dr. B, you were telling us an interesting story about a situation that you encountered while you were in the service, because you were in the Army, correct?
Yeah, I was 6 years in the Army and jail guard, and then I was a helicopter pilot, 82nd Airborne.
Cool. Airborne.
But anyway, this happened after I was in the military, but it is veteran related. I was before I got the job at Citrus, I was interviewing in Barrow, Alaska, Point Barrow, which is the northernmost point in North America, and there was a community college system there, mostly Native Alaskans, Inupiat people, what people used to call Eskimos, but they don't call themselves that anymore. It's Inupiat or Inuit if you're in Canada. Anyway, I was there interviewing for the job, and it was just an incredibly moving experience for me, because I learned about, everybody's told, oh, don't kill whales, and all that stuff, save the whales. That is their whole culture. Everything, their religion, everything is related to the whale. So they were telling me about, the spiritualism of the whale, and it was a beautiful explanation that they gave me. Well, anyway, I was staying at this hotel, and in the middle, it was, light 24 hours. So I walked out at midnight, and I was walking on the beach, and of course there's no wave action. The ice is all the way up to the beach, right? So I'm walking there, and it was really nice, and all of a sudden I heard this voice up on the little bluff, maybe 20 feet high above the beach. And this guy said, where you are was the old village. And I said, oh, and he said, I said, well, where is it? And he said, well, the sea takes away and gives. It was like a philosophy lesson.
Yeah.
The sea takes away and gives. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, come up here. He had this little patch of grass, and it was this little Inupiat man with glasses. He was missing a lot of teeth, and he was smiling though, even though he had no teeth. He was smiling. And I came up next to him, and he told me he was a Vietnam vet. He'd served in Vietnam, and he talked about how that changed him, and how he was still having trouble, since he came back to his village. And he said he had lost his grandfather when he was in the jungle in Vietnam. And anyway, so he was, and then I said, I was such a stupid tourist. I said, are there polar bears around here? And he laughed, and he said, there was a polar bear about 100 meters from you behind that ice floe. He was about to kill you. And I said, you're kidding me. And my heart, went like, yeah. And he said, yeah, he's right over there. And and I said, so you basically saved my life. And he said, well, yeah, I guess I'm here for a reason. So then we talked about Vietnam, and I was still frightened. I was looking for that polar bear. He never came out. But anyway, if that guy didn't say anything, I would have, because I didn't have a gun with me. And I noticed all of them carry rifles. They're all, nobody walks outside their door to go do anything without a rifle, because there's polar bears everywhere. I have no idea.
It's interesting how calmly he just presented, like he didn't warn you, like, hey, get away from the boat. It was
come up here. It's warmer up here. That's what he said. It's warmer up here. He said, if you sit on this little thing of grass, it's warmer. And it's sure enough, he sat cross-legged, and I said, oh yeah, it's warmer. And then he gave me a lesson on, he said, we don't know how to swim. And I said, you don't know how to swim? You're in these, little kayaks all the time. He said, it doesn't matter if you know how to swim. If you fall out of the boat, the water's so cold you'll die within 2 minutes anyway. It doesn't matter if you can swim or not. So you just don't fall out of the boat.
Yeah.
He told me about the whales, and he's telling me about Vietnam, and his name was Willie. Remember, his name was Willie. And I went back for the interview the next day, and I told the lady that was showing me around, I said, I met Willie yesterday. And she said, you did? I said, yeah, I talked to him. She said, you did? You talked to him? And like he was a ghost or something, it's like, yeah, I talked to him, he saved my life. And she said, he did? And I said, yeah, he did. I'm telling you, I met Willie. And it's like, and then I asked more questions, but she didn't want to tell me anything. And I'm wondering if he's kind of like I don't know, like he comes and goes or something, or, whatever. But it was a very mystical experience. And I did some research to see if I could find a guy named Willie. There was no record of any guy named Willie up there. So the whole thing is very mysterious. I know it was real. I wasn't imagining the whole thing. I wasn't like sleepwalking or something. He saved my life, and he taught me about the importance of indigenous people and whaling and that culture. And
you spent quite a bit of time with him. So not to.
I was probably sitting there for an hour, I was, and he taught me, he was teaching me things about the ice flows and weather, and, and the area there, and polar bear. I mean, he was just, and then he wouldn't just tell me the story. He would then ask me questions about what he had just told me. So it's like I was being quizzed. And then if I got it wrong, he said, I told you this. And they would, very serious. Kind of like what in the Army, when a senior NCO is teaching you something, and then, okay, tell me what, and then if you get it wrong, it's like, they want to slap you in the head or something,
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, this is going to save your life. You need to know this stuff. But anyway, that's my little story about.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I'm still wondering if he even existed, like if he was even alive still. Like
I don't know. I have this idea that it might have been a spirit, but because the way she, you did, you saw him, and you talked to him. Yeah, I talked to him. Yeah, I saw him yesterday. Yeah, whatever. So
maybe it was a spirit.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. What's fascinating? There's actually a show about that, about living in Alaska, and only Native Americans, right, or individuals that are in that category are allowed to hunt certain species of animals. And I know a lot of people, are against that, but at the end of the day, they're not doing it as a sport. They're doing it as part of their culture
or commercializing it.
Yeah.
It's their it's their livelihood, like Dr. B was saying.
Yeah, that the way he explained it to me, he says the relationship between his people and the whale is like they're a family, and the whale sacrifices itself to keep the people alive.
Yeah.
And they worship the whale. I mean, they worship the whale. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go out and kill a whale. Hey, look at me, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is a very what's the word I'm looking? It's a very holy thing.
Yeah.
It's funny. My sister keeps telling me that in an apocalypse they're eating me first, but I don't know if it's much of a I'm sacrificing, as they are just forcefully feeding themselves with me. I don't know.
Huh.
You're like in the zombie.
My older sister said, like, we're eating you first in the apocalypse.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So what the main show for today though are, last week we spoke about phenomena, and then you talked
I want
about psychic
a little bit of a recap from last time, dude.
Yeah.
I missed it. I did go back and watch a few minutes of it, but I was mostly but I do what happened last time, or what's
You're gonna have
I know that I knew for a while
you're
that
gonna
you
have to watch it, Jose.
Really?
Yeah, you're gonna have to watch it.
I can just tell you, I mean, I've had paranormal.
I know that you're into paranormal and investigations and things like that. So yeah.
Since I was 4 years old, I've had paranormal things happen, but I kind of kept it to myself, and it wasn't until 2016 when a dear friend of mine passed away, and a month later he came to me in a vision, and he told me it was time to tell my stories, which includes ghosts and telepathy and psychokinesis and alien contact, all that stuff. I was too afraid to tell those stories. I thought I would be fired. I'm a professor, and I thought people are going to think I'm nuts. They're going to, send me to the funny farm or something. I don't know what's going to happen. Retire me early. And so I gained the courage because my friend Gene told me to do it, and it's opened up a whole new part of my life, a new chapter. I just relayed some of the stories, some of the kind of more pleasant things, and some of the more scary stuff, in keeping with the Halloween theme there. But we didn't get much into the aliens. But I will say this, that the spirit world, the alien world, and the quantum world, is my theory, are all the same thing. I think that all operates in the same realm. So it's not like if you have an alien experience, you're not going to have a ghost experience. I mean, it's very similar because they operate in the same subatomic, that quantum world, which is different than our subjective reality.
For a while now, that's where I was leaning towards when you because I'll say it now, it's since we're on the air, like, I'm not very religious. I lean more towards the atheist side. But the way that I try to explain these things, that are the unexplainable things that happen, or that people have caught on video, audio, whatever it is something similar to that, where it's maybe two universes or two parallel universes probably meshing together during that specific time of that recording, that audio, that whatever it was. And then they've caught that specific moment where a shadow has passed by, or an actual apparition, or they've caught an audio, an EVP and it's just that those two realms combining together, like, because I do think that there's multiple,
we catch glimpses of that other dimension, that other world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
there's many names for it, but that's I read this book once where it was by a medium, a psychic medium, and they said, they called it heaven. They said heaven is only 3 feet away from us. So in other words, the other world, whatever you want to call it, is only it's all around us all the time. So we have, as I'm speaking right now, there are spirits around me and around you guys, but most people don't recognize it. And if you did recognize it all the time, how could you live a normal life in this subjective reality, right? So we only catch glimpses of it. And the really scary thing, you guys, because I know we always like to talk about mental health when we get veterans together. It's very, very important, like, suicide awareness and all that, is that sometime I was talking to a psychiatrist, and I told him, I said, is it possible that people who are schizophrenic or that are psychotic, that they could be very, very psychic, and they just don't know how to handle when they glimpse the other side? Like if they see all these spirits around them and they're talking to them, and is there some way that they've stepped into that world and they can't get back? And he looked at me like really frightened, and he said, that's a really frightening thought.
Yeah.
Because can you imagine? I mean, I've had these experiences my whole life, but I also always get grounded. I come back and get grounded. And I think it's very, very important.
Well, not the answer, but I mean, as long as it isn't like chemically induced, or it's not,
it's a natural thing.
It's a natural, the natural.
I mean, there are people who do the, like mystical journeys with, substances. I've never done that. I don't even drink alcohol. I have a natural ability to connect since I was a little kid. So, whether it's, through a meditative state. So,
But so I have to bring that up because a lot of people do drugs and then they say they see stuff,
Right.
But then you have to think, is it the drugs that are giving you a type of psychosis feel, or is it actually that they're seeing stuff?
Well, it's hard to say. I think that there is research that shows that, this kind of stuff, you can connect that way, but it's obviously not the preferred way to do it. I mean, ancient people did it. Native Americans use, certain substances, people in South America, indigenous people, but you don't need to. That's the whole thing. To get into a meditative state, the whole idea of, I need like candles and robes and herbs and burning things. I mean, all that stuff is all just, it like gets people into the mood to do this stuff, but it's all really right here and all around us. The great,
Actually, well, like when they do like paranormal investigations, they try to set this mood of it has to be in the dark, you have to be alone, but it happens at any time.
It can happen in the middle of the day.
Yeah, it happens at any, but it is, it does set this particular mood so that it draws people into it, or so that it draws people. Even if you're taking substances, it's so that you believe that it's drawing you into it. So
and like my friend Gene told me, because I've had a lot of discussions with him when I take my spirit walks, and he always says that experiencing is believing, and believing is experiencing. So in other words, once you've experienced it, then I believe it's true. There are ghosts, or I can talk to people who have passed away. And then once you believe that it's part of your belief system, then it invites more, because now you've accepted that. So you've gone through the doorway. Now it's easier to get through that doorway and see other things too.
Or you don't want to open the doorway, then they'll do that.
The best way, if you're afraid of this stuff, the best way is just don't believe it.
You won't open the door.
Don't open the door.
For me, my thought process, my theory on this whole alien spiritual, last week I spoke a little bit of my spiritual belief, but when it comes to extraterrestrial, first of all, we have to think of what life is, right? So a lot of times people are so close-minded. When we think of life, we think of a human or an animal, right? But we never stop to think that there's organisms living amongst us everywhere. Every time I take a breath, I'm swallowing millions, billions of creatures, organisms, right? So we have to think of organisms as what they are, a living thing. But what do we consider a living thing, right? Whenever people say, I believe in Jesus Christ as Father, all this religious stuff, whatever religion you believe in, not trying to get into the denominations, you believe that there's a heaven and a hell. Well, that would be outside of this world. So how can you not believe in extraterrestrials if you have faith in an extraterrestrial being that lives in whatever heaven is or wherever heaven is? So, and that's pretty much my thought process. I mean, so I would never say that I'm atheist, but I am a spiritual person. I believe in a spiritual higher being. That's there, and maybe it is something that's clear and transparent. Like you see right through it. Might be standing right next to you, and you wouldn't know it. You might just feel that presence, and that's about it. But
it's an interesting thing, and I know Jose, you said that you kind of lean towards atheism. It's funny, when I taught the paranormal class at Citrus, I taught it at night. This is before the pandemic. Taught it for about 2 years. I had people take the class that were skeptics, and so they just said, "Oh, this is BS." This is and by the end of the class, and I'm not saying it was my doing, it was everybody in the class, because they were all there for a specific reason. And by the end of the class, they're like asking me questions like, my cat died a year ago, but I still feel the cat on my lap sometimes. Is it possible that a cat is a spirit? Is there a spirit animal? I said, there are spirit animals. They're living creatures that have passed on, and they can have an afterlife as well. And so they were more.
Or it could have been, and sorry, but it could have been that similar thing that happens with phantom limbs. You have your muscle twitches because it's used to this weight on it, so that twitch happens to make you feel like it's something's resting on it, so it's like a phantom twitch.
No, that's a possibility too, and that's a very good example, the phantom limb syndrome or whatever, but so what was interesting is the guy, he was totally thought it was wanted to debunk, to where I'm going to entertain some ideas here. I'm going to think about this, and which was interesting. But it was based on the experiences of the class, not necessarily me, but there was like 35 people in that class that have all had incredible experiences. And we did like experiments in the class and so forth. But what's interesting about the alien thing is that so many people, there's a lot of people who say, oh, yeah, there's probably ghosts. I believe people, and they tell me they've seen a ghost or they've had some kind of mystical. But then if you say, and then, well, what about aliens? They're like, nah, I'm not going to go that far.
But should it be? It should be the opposite.
But recently, in fact, just last week, the head of NASA, Bill Nelson, who is a former astronaut, former senator, U.S. senator, said that he thinks the UAP phenomena, what they used to call UFOs, but now the government doesn't like the word UFO, so they call it UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. It's the same thing. They just don't want to get caught in with the UFO crowd, so they said UAPs.
It up, boy.
He said they're not terrestrial, so that kind of narrows it down. So you got these high-powered people in the government saying this, and then you got this report that went to Congress. And now they have an actual part of the DoD, Department of Defense, that is going to study the UAP. So it's not, it's no longer a fringe thing. It's actually, what do they call it in finance and budgeting? It's, it's part of their funding. It's not like an extra thing. It's part of the DoD now.
Oh, it's a budgetary.
Yes.
There's some kind of accounting term for it that I'm sure you guys have probably heard, but I just can't remember what it is. But anyway, it is part of the DoD. So, and you've seen some of the footage, and these are pilots, fighter pilots, and
you know what's crazy?
Officers and trusted people who have seen this stuff. So it's.
But NASA has already in front on camera addressed it with Congress. In 2017, Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, the one that was in charge of technology at that time, was asked by NASA for funding, and they said that that on Mars there's life, and he asked the question. So what you're saying is that there's life in Mars, and of course, what NASA was talking about is organisms or some type of living species, and everybody went berserk saying that Dana Rohrabacher, a congressman, was losing his mind, believing in green people walking, and that was not the question. The question to NASA was, are you saying that there are aliens on Mars, or some type of living being on Mars? And it just turned into something else. And I just always think that sometimes just people, like we talked about the last show, they just don't open their mind to believe that there's things that we just don't see. You just got to believe it.
It's said close-mindedness, where it's when you preface it with, is there life in other planets or beyond this world?
Yeah.
And they only encompass bipedal or something intelligent, like what we believe to be, because a lot of us are not. But that's all they think about, or an animal, something that larger than what they can hold in their hands or something like that.
And that's all. Might not even be corporeal. Might not even be the physical presence. It reminds me the remember the movie Men in Black?
Yeah,
hilarious movie, great movie. Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. They're dynamite together. But anyway, there's a scene where he opens up like a bus station locker.
Yeah,
and there's like all these little people living in there.
Yeah,
it's their whole world. So it could be this life or other entities, maybe intelligent. They might be extremely tiny. They might be, even microscopic, and we would never even know it. Who knows?
Or the Who's. The Who's.
Yeah.
Dr. Seuss is bringing it up. The Who's.
Dr. Seuss has already taught us everything we need to know, right there.
It's really interesting. To me, it's the planet Earth. All right, it's a speck compared to other planets, solar systems that are like billions, trillions of times bigger than ours. Suns and planets that have the same concepts that we have, where we have a sun, 3-4 planets, the third rock from the sun that we are, and there's galaxies that have a sun that's way bigger, that has 3 planets away, and there's planets that look like Earth. Yeah,
they call it like that Goldilocks zone.
Yeah, and have that same organic components that we do, which means that why couldn't there be life somewhere else? I mean,
to me, it's my whole life. I've believed it, and I've had experiences, like I've said. So it's been part of my life, and I know I wanted to mention some. You guys, we talked briefly about this. We talked about mental health awareness and so forth around the holidays, and I had I went through some training with DBT. Dialectical behavioral therapy at the Long Beach VA, and I highly recommend it. I mean, it was really good. And I was in a group with like some combat vets and a Navy SEAL, and it was just they were all younger than me, but so I would kind of took on this kind of mentor role, which was fun. I really enjoyed it. But the thing I learned, and I tie it into aliens and in just a minute, the whole thing is about mindfulness, which I know you guys know about mindfulness, and that you have the logic mind or the wise mind, the logic mind, and the emotion mind, and that we're three. These things are always in operation all the time, And when we were going through this book and I was, learning all this stuff, I go, that's kind of like the original Star Trek. You got the three main characters. You got Captain Kirk, who's the wise mind, and you got Bones, the Dr. McCoy, who's the emotion mind, and then you got Spock, who's the logic mind. And you really need all of them together, working together to make good decisions in your life. Captain Kirk always sought the counsel of both of them to make a good decision, the wise mind decision. And so anyway, Star Trek, which is, to me, it seems like Gene Roddenberry, who created the thing, and it's still going. It's a multi-billion-dollar franchise or whatever. But I think he was tapping. I think he had alien experience. I've never proven it, but I think he had some kind of contact because he was so advanced in a lot of the stuff that he came up with, stuff that we have every day. Cell phones and all the other stuff they came up with. It's all modern. It's our technology that we have now. So I kind of have this idea that he tapped into something, and I think it was something extraterrestrial. Is my theory.
Yeah. On one of the episodes, it's interesting. I just saw it last month on one of the episodes. They're beam me up, Scotty. They're. And I was like, oh, that guy has a freaking iWatch. And this is like back in the 70s. It was pretty interesting.
The one that always gets brought up on this is Matt Groening, the Simpsons producer creator.
Yeah.
I mean, how? I mean, military stuff. The military stuff, the
people that would become president.
Politics.
He predicted it.
I mean, how does he do that? And I get maybe if something kind of happened or somebody played something that he had put once in a while, but it just keeps happening over and over and over and over. It's just.
You know what? I have a theory.
You gotta have that insider. The insider.
I got a theory about everything. But anyway, here's my theory. It could be a crackpot theory, but hear me out. When creative people are tapping into something that's beyond them.
Way above.
Yeah, like when you get these musicians, these master musicians, and you look at somebody like Stevie Ray Vaughan or some, one of these, he's passed on, but these super creative people, they're tapping in. They call it the muse, right? But it's really they're tapping into something above our reality to pull down whatever it is and share it with us through their art, their music, their art, their writing, whatever. And I think, what Gene told me was very interesting when I contacted him and after he passed away. He said, where I am, there is no past, there's no future. It's all happening at the same time. It's what he called the eternal now. Yeah. So that means that you would have access. You could pull down things that, maybe Matt Groening knew that, a businessman, a billionaire businessman would become the president of the United States. Like he did predict that in the show, And so they, these things are all happening at once. So they're pulling this stuff down with these incredible predictive powers. Not that they have control of it. It's not like they can control it comes down as a creative thing. But they don't necessarily, can sit there and tell you what the stock market will be tomorrow, or it's not like that kind of precision. It's more of these ideas and concepts.
Yeah,
I think
that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you start thinking about, I could get into stuff.
Wait, because I know
you're gonna throw me to the nut job category.
No, I want to head in the alien, because I want to know your opinion, because I know that we only have a few minutes and we could probably talk all night about this, but I want to know your thought about the time that was released, how they released these videos and this documentary, and they accepted that there's something going on beyond this world. What do you think about the time that they released all this information? Because it was like mid-pandemic.
It was a disclose. Yeah, it's some stuff came out in 2017, and now it's been, accelerating. This disclosure, they call it disclosure process. I think what they're doing is it's the drip, drip, drip. They're giving you a little bit of information at a time, because I think, the government is known, I'm not big into the whole conspiracy thing, but there is an element to it, because I really think they don't really understand everything, but they do know more than they're saying, and they share just a little bit at a time because they don't want to create panic.
Chaos.
I mean, if they were to come out, if President Biden came out tomorrow and said, well, I'd really like you to pass this bill, but before I talk about that, let me introduce Alien Bob here, who's my friend. People are just, their minds will be, and there'll be panic in the streets. That's what they've always been afraid of. That's why the president, like President Obama and President Clinton, they are really coy about answering the questions about aliens. They say, well, I can't really talk about it. So whenever somebody says, well, I can't really talk about, well, there's a lot to say. And
I wonder if they shared any of that information with President Trump, because I'm pretty sure he would have spilled the beans on everything.
There's people without filters, and I think he might qualify as a person without a filter. I mean, we all know people that don't have filters. It's not, doesn't make him a bad person, but you would think he would have said something, but then again, maybe he didn't have all the info. So
the big thing is that there's things that are classified to need to know, and even if the president, you would think that he would have the highest clearance, right?
You would think
over
so.
anything, but being in the military, it's a need to know. So if the president doesn't need to know, like, there's no purpose of him knowing. So what's the point of telling him? And people don't understand how classification works. And getting into that, I mean, since we're talking about UFOs and classification, just to clear up classification, I can have I don't know, this gnome right here, right? So I have this gnome. Nothing is classified about this guy except his backside. So I could show you all day his front side, but the backside is the class, because back here he has a special mechanism. That's how classification works. So F-35, those B-1 bombers, B-52, those have classification categories that you looking at the aircraft flying around, the F-35 flying around, that's not classified. What's classified about that aircraft, of course, is the components and the nozzles in the back of the nozzles, the paint, all that stuff. That stuff is classified because then it's information that another country could use to dominate or be more superior than us in combat. So that's how classification works, and it's always a need to know.
No, you're right. Like with submarines, people want to know, well, what is the hull crush depth? I asked a submariner guy, just got out of the Navy once. I said, what is the hull crush depth of one of the boomers you're on? He said, that's classified. We can't. I can't tell you that. I said, well, I can make a guess. And he said, well, you can guess, but I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Because a lot of people say, well, I've seen the aircraft pictures all on the internet. All the non-classified stuff is definitely out there. You could see pictures of all these classified aircraft. That's great, but it's not the whole aircraft that's classified. It's specific components or specific specs.
And the flight characteristics, like with the B-1, the ability to fly nap of the earth, was classified. When I was on the B-1 program at Boeing, we couldn't talk about, because we knew the number, but we were, we had a top secret clearance, so we couldn't say it. I don't even know if I can say it. Well, the B-1's old technology now, but anyway.
But it still hasn't been released.
It probably hasn't been released. So, it's still in use, right? So, but, you can look at, like you said, videos of the whole thing, but you're not going to know all the characteristics of it. Now, these UAPs, back to the UFO stuff, the flight characteristics are beyond any kind of thing. Well, as they always say, not in our Earth's inventory. So if it's not in Earth's inventory, but they said, but we're not saying it's alien technology. If it's not in Earth's inventory, then what is it?
But you know, and in you know what's funny is that in the 70s we actually developed a flying saucer. What the typical thing that you would hear about, the flying saucer looking fighter aircraft, and the problem was that we couldn't the components of steel that we were trying to use. It would overheat and create such a awful heat for the pilot that he pretty much was burning up inside while trying to fly this thing, right? These test pilots. So sometimes if you think, to me, the reason that I think that the government hasn't released all this UFO technology is because we're trying to mimic it or try to develop something similar to what we have in recordings. And not give it away to another country, so that we
trying to reverse engineer.
So we hold the keys or at least the visual components of something that maybe hasn't been seen in another country. So it's you know, I think that's one of the main reasons they haven't released all this information. You know, of course, along with what you were talking about, is that the fact that, you know, people would just panic.
I mean, think about it. If people knew, well, I have a lot of suspicions of what's actually, and actually I can't say the guy's name, but there's a prominent guy that talks a lot about this, that what he says in private and what he says in public are two different things. And they're just not ready to, you know, because he is signed, and people do have to sign non-disclosure agreements, you know, and besides their oath, you know, to keep their you know, the nation's secrets. But it is an exciting time. I mean, it's a hard time that we're living in right now, but it's also a very exciting time. You know, because there's so many things going on, and I have confidence that I think we're heading towards a evolutionary leap. But not everybody's ready for it, you know, where we understand all this stuff a little bit more. But you know, it's hard. You know, any kind of growth like that is hard. You know, it's hard for people to make a change. And if they're thinking otherworldly stuff, you know, that's, for some people, I just got to put food on the table. I can't worry about whether aliens are real or not. I gotta go to work, and I gotta make enough money for the rent, you know, so they're not like thinking of, they don't have time to think about it. I mean, maybe it's entertaining to do it, but it's not something that is satisfying a specific need for them at this time. So
I mean, it's a very hard topic, you know, and it's kind of hard to talk about it today. You know, but Jose, you got any news for all the vets out there?
No, what we do want to bring up next week, and I know, like we mentioned earlier in the show, that maybe a lot of veterans already have their places to go for Veterans Day. But also next week we're going to be having not only those type of resources like free stuff, freebies, discounts, and things like that, but winter shelters also are opening up. Winter's coming, so if we'll have that list for you next week, so that if you see someone out there, you can help them out. You know, there's a lot of not only the shelters, but also the soup kitchens and things like that open up, the pantries during the winter.
Big things that homeless veterans need, of course, are always blankets and socks. That's the big request.
That's what I heard. Socks. Yeah, it's like almost the number one.
Socks.
Yeah. Something we take for granted, you know, a clean pair of socks, you know.
There's also a few. The Los Angeles Veteran Collaborative also expanded their some of their events that are happening within LA County. So because I believe they only had a few planned for the month of October and November, but now they're jumping into December, and they do have blankets and things like that to give away on some of them, and some raffle stuff, but definitely a lot of resources that they will be providing, and also the shelters. So
Yeah.
we'll have that list and more information next week. Next Thursday will be Veterans Day. So
we might keep it a little short because I
yeah,
know I'm going to be celebrating.
Yeah. I might be at your house
Celebrating.
actually. So
There we go. All right. Dr. B, thank you so much for coming on the show again. We'll definitely have to bring you back so we can discuss some other stuff.
Give you the alien update.
Yeah,
yeah,
we should call it that. We should call it the alien update. So stay tuned, everybody, for the alien update. It's coming.
Yeah,
I want to hear some stories.
I wanted to mention something that for veterans, I just found this out. In Orange County, there's this place called Tanaka Farms, and it's a really cool place to take your family, and veterans are free entrance for veterans there. And they got like holiday lights, and they got like this wagon ride where your whole family can get in this wagon. They'll take you around their farm, and there's like lights, Christmas lights. It's just kind of a cool. It's not like sleigh bells, but you know, it's the best you can do for Southern California, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you for showing up. We'll see you till next week. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye, you guys.